Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock on August 22nd. Good to have so many people here with us. What we normally do is pledge allegiance to our country to open up with. Follow that. That we have from the Westfield Friends Church, part of a original Westfield. Clear back in the 1830s, we have Josh Cortez. And if you would, following that, Josh, please give us an invocation. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your microphone is live, sir.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Like the Mayor Cook said, my name is Josh Cortez. I'm the lead pastor at Westfield Friends Church, and it's always an honor to be here and lead in this time. And so if you would, just bow your heads with me, and we'll open up with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, I do thank you for tonight. I do pray that you would guide us, as always, that you would satisfy the needs of this community, of these people. Lord, that you would strengthen us as we wrestle through decisions that are brought this evening. I pray that we would be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose water never fails. I pray that you would be fruitful. Father, please guide us so that this meeting can be productive. Let us be effective and decisive. God, we do pray for peace as well and unity as you preside over this meeting. Look at the wall, and I do pray that we would trust in you. We pray for a spirit of unity. Help us to listen and politely as others share their points of views. Help us to work as a unified body in combining ideas for a greater outcome. Help us to work as a whole rather than individuals and trying to promote our own agendas. May we have a spirit of community in this room and work together on these shared missions. Pray these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Mr. Johns, would you care to conduct this meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Okay. Cindy Gossard, could you note the presence of a quorum, please?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Here.
Cindy Spalgeric. Here. Joe Edwards.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Jake Gilbert.
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, first item of business on the agenda tonight is approval of the meeting minutes from August 8th. Counselors, do you have any questions regarding those minutes? Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the city council meeting minutes from August 8th.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Scott Wills, seconded by Cindy Spalgeric. Cindy Gossard, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
The next item on the docket is the approval of the claims docket for August 22nd, 2022. Counselors, any questions regarding tonight's claims docket? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket?
Motion to approve.
Second. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We've got several items of special business this evening. The first is an update on the historical cabin next door by Diane Payton.
Good evening. I love being here this evening because I see all my old friends sitting back here. It's really good to see people I used to work with. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. For the record, I'm Diana Payton, and I'm president of the Westfield, Washington Historical Society. I have the privilege of being here tonight to update you on the 1835 Barker log cabin that's sitting next door here to City Hall. As most of you've noticed, the cabin next door is moving right along. The foundation is in, the logs are up, treated and sealed. The chinking and the daubing is complete, the roof structure is on, and other components have been cleaned, sanded, prepared, ready for installation. The next 3 or 4 weeks of construction will move pretty fast. The whole cabin will be power washed at the end of this week. Then construction will begin on the porches, the flooring will be installed, and the mason will start working on the fireplace and the foundation. And then the standing seam roofing will be installed. Jim and the construction team will be building the doors and installing the windows. A few touch-ups and a punch list review, and our cabin should be completed. Our completion date is November the 1st. We are still raising funds by selling memorial bricks and seeking community donations. You all know what we've been through the last 2 years. The pandemic hit, our cabin construction was delayed 2 years. In the meantime, inflation went wild. Material and labor shortages and material costs skyrocketed. This has caused our initial cost estimates to be over budget. Plywood alone went from $18 to $60 a sheet. Nails doubled, and specialized log cabin material jumped through the roof. The special sealant that we use for the logs went to $150 a gallon. These are just a few things that we have been faced with during this project. Trying to counteract some of the raising costs, we became the most frugal customer that our cabin master has ever had. I don't think he knew how to handle us. We bartered, we mowed yards. Oh, by the way, if you see me driving a little red pickup truck with a trailer on the back, please scoot over and give me extra room because I still haven't mastered to drive with a trailer. And Mayor, I'm so sorry, sir. I think you're going to have to replace some curbs, but we'll get there. Anyway, we have done most all the running for the supplies for the cabin master. We have traveled statewide to find the right period lumber for a lesser cost. We bought log cabin boards and lumber from old barns that had been taken down. We spent 85 cents to $1.25 a board foot on lumber that we found that our cabin master was to charge the going rate of $11.50 a foot. We even try to buy as much of our supplies, our paintbrushes, the rags that they use to wipe down, the brushes, the gloves, the sanding paper from Menards, so we can get the 11% rebate. To date, we have gotten about $1,200 in rebates that we have reinvested back into the cabin. We have put sweat equity into the cabin by cleaning, sanding, denailing, moving material, digging, painting, and anything else that we've been able to do. We are on the job daily, sometimes all day long, sometimes 6 days a week. I hope you understand that we are and have really tried to keep the costs down, but budget overages are real. With that said, we are seeking donations because of the inflated expenses. We believe this is a great opportunity for our community to become part of the Barker log cabin by donating and or by buying a memorial brick. so please give this consideration. We see the excitement every day as the community walks to and fro in front of the cabin, driving in front of the cabin. And yes, we're even happy to see those that show up every single day. The kids are riding their bikes by the cabin, and wow, you would not believe the questions that they're asking. They are so excited and can't wait to get inside. There's a little neighbor boy, 3 or 4 houses down the street. He has been watching the cabin since we started, and he visits weekly. He always asks, "Mister, have you got my cabin done yet?" The comments have been very positive and complimental, and I've been asked to relay to you, our mayor, and to you, the city council, a huge thank you for your joint support in seeing our vision and saving one of the oldest homes in Westfield, and for your support to reconstruct such an important part of Westfield history. This truly is a historical time, and we have saved a Westfield cabin dating back to the beginning of our town. Congratulations, and thank you very much again for seeing our vision and having the foresight to support this cabin. You know, working on the cabin and talking to the folks that come by, because I'm out there quite a bit. And at first I was sitting in a lawn chair out under the tree, but that didn't last very long. You really have to get up and get busy. There's a lot to do. But the community has stopped and talked, and I've realized that Westfield and our community needs something positive, something to be proud of, something significant that they can use, something that visitors to our city can come to and spend time and enjoy, relax, and learn of our rich history and how the pioneers lived. And something to tell, we need something to tell the story of Westfield's history as a station on the Underground Railroad. How cool is this cabin going to be for that? The little boy down the street again, he just can't wait, and neither can I. I'd like to acknowledge some of our construction volunteers, Jeff Beals, Steve Osborne, Rick Wallace, Bill Lambden, Jim Payton, Terry Carruthers, Phil Barker, and Greg Payton. And I'm going to be very nice here. These aged gentlemen are finding that they have bones and muscles that they haven't used in years. And at their age, it's harder to get up and down than it used to be. Just last Saturday, after 6 hours of working, I heard, "I need a nap." I haven't worked this hard since I retired. But all joking aside, thank you so much for these volunteers, for so much of their time and their effort to making this cabin come to life again for our community. And a special thanks to Bill Lambden for complimenting on me having the best beef and noodles he has ever eaten. He's my favorite. I'd like to remind our community that this is an active job site, and our insurance has instructed us to keep visitors behind the orange and yellow caution. But I promise you, as soon as we can, by the beginning of November, I will personally welcome everyone to Nicholas and Fanny Barker's beautiful reconstructed log cabin. I hope Mr. Barker is happy with the commitment that we have putting into making his cabin an example of Westfield's early pioneer living that dates back to the beginning of our city's existence. And to the Barker family, a special thanks for the rich history in our city and letting us be a part of their history and heritage. I hope we've made them proud, and I hope we've made you proud. Any questions?
No, but I have a suggestion.
Yes, sir?
If you would hold one beef and noodle mashed potatoes and green bean dinner like I saw you do years ago down the street, you could probably go a long way in filling this gap.
We might arrange that.
Counselors?
Council, any questions or comments?
Diane, how far away are you from your goal at this point?
About 25,000. 3 weeks ago, we were at 40. And in the last 3 weeks, I have collected around 15,000 in donations. That's not including selling any bricks. We're still selling the bricks, and I've not included those because we do have to pay for the bricks. But we're about 25 estimated. I do want to let you know, though, this cabin is going to get done. This cabin is not going to be boarded up. This cabin will be ready for Mrs. Claus during Westfield and Lights to read books by the fireplace to the children. And since we can't have two Santa Clauses in town, as soon as Westfield and Lights is over, we will have Santa Claus in the cabin. So we'll have a rip-roaring fire going. She'll be sitting in a rocking chair and being able to read to the children. This is an awesome, this is an educational center. And I just wish that you folks could sit out there in the yard and actually see these kids that ride by and stop and say, man, what is that? Can I touch it?
Diana, I guess I would just thank you for all your efforts. I'd like to second the mayor's suggestion that perhaps we should have some type of a fundraising dinner. And I certainly would participate with you to try to make that happen. So again, thanks for your efforts. If you want to have like a brainstorming session, let us know. We'd be happy to get involved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Stop by.
Thank you.
It's real far away.
The next item on this evening's agenda is a presentation by Caleb Ernest talking about the non-residential data for, I guess, non-residential areas within our city. Okay, Caleb, turn over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Just real quickly, before Caleb gets started, just for the record, Kevin Todd, Community Development Department. Just want to put a little bit of framework around the presentation this evening. So this is, as you may recall, this is the second presentation that we've made to you this year. This is the second really in a series of presentations that we've been preparing that have been designed to give kind of a data-driven snapshot of who we are as a community, really just from the land use perspective, while also at the same time providing just some basic terminology that we use day in and day out, just as really kind of an education piece for everybody listening, as well as just to highlight some of our processes and just some of the overall just procedures and processes that we send development projects through. So as you may recall, the first presentation highlighted residential inventory. Tonight's presentation, as indicated on the title here, will highlight non-residential stock and inventory. The next presentation will further break down the non-residential inventory into different land use classifications. And then there will be a final presentation that will really kind of pull everything together that we've been talking about over the course of these presentations, and also give a little bit more of a financial discussion to that as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Caleb.
Thank you, Kevin, President, members of the council. So as Kevin alluded to, there'll be a little bit of some terminology, basic terminology that we'll be going over here. So when talking about non-residential, we're gonna see the words platting, and not platted come up a lot. So we'll also see lots, blocks, and DDP, which stands for Detailed Development Plan. So going over this, a plat is a document that creates property It shows its boundary lines, common area, right-of-way, and dimensions. For the presentation, we will not be covering common area or right-of-way. We're just talking about the boundary and the property. So plating is a process that takes the boundary lines and it either draws them for the first time, it redraws them to make new boundary lines, or it eliminates the boundary lines altogether. So in areas that are not platted is a property that's not been platted yet. So this is an example of a plat that shows the boundary lines, right-of-way, common area, the lots and the blocks that are on it. So when we talk about a lot is an individual property or parcel. A block is an area dedicated for future platting. So same plat example that we had up, everything highlighted, those are 2 lots that are on the property. And everything highlighted now is an example of a block that is on the property. So plats in the process of platting can create a single or multiple lots on one plat. Similarly, plats in the process of platting can create a single or multiple blocks on one plat. So when we talk about a detailed development plan, a DDP, that is a plan that is reviewed and approved for the construction of a specific building. So this is one page of a detailed development plan. This is the Portillo's site plan. So every non-residential lot requires DDP approval. Once the DDP is approved, construction can then occur. So if there is no DDP that is approved, it either means that a lot was created but is waiting for a user, or a lot was not created and is waiting to be platted so the lot can be created. A block, if there is no detailed development plan required for blocks. So blocks may be platted multiple times in the future before lots are created, and thus a detailed development plan can be approved. Meaning blocks are essentially a placeholder for future development. So the size, the shape, and the number of lots is not known at that time. So why is this all important? It's important ultimately for understanding the development process. So if we take an existing property as an example, it goes through the platting process. Again, that's where we draw and we redraw those boundary lines. The platting process creates lots, blocks, and it can even leave area that's not platted. If a lot is created, a detailed development plan is ultimately approved, and then construction can then occur. If a block is created, it would have to go through platting again to create lots. Eventually, a DDP would be required, and then construction can be approved, or it can occur once the DDP is approved. And for areas that are not platted, would have to go through the platting process. Lots would then be created. DDPs would be required for approval, and then construction can then occur. So an example of this, one project can have all those different stages, the lots, the blocks, and areas not platted. So Wheeler Landing, as an example, it was zoned and approved back in 2018. It contains a total of 321 acres, and currently it is made up of 34 individual lots. So we have US 31, State Road 32, it's the northwest area of the city. Everything outlined in blue is the Wheeler Landing project, 321 acres. And the 34 lots that I discussed is what makes up the entirety of the project. Now within Wheeler Landing, the areas highlighted here have been platted into lots, individual lots. What is highlighted here is what have been platted into blocks, those placeholders where future lots will be created. And everything highlighted here are areas that have not been platted at all yet. So one project contains all 3 different segments of non-residential development. So if we follow the development process for one specific area in Wheeler Landing, specifically one block and how it develops over time, this is the hard corner, northwest corner of Wheeler Road, State Road 32. Here's the Monon Bridge. We're addressing this piece of land right here. So in September 2019 was when the original plat was approved. It looks something like this. Again, here is Wheeler Road and the Monon Bridge, and this is the area that we'll be referencing. In October 2020, one block was created by platting. It was labeled Block C. So the same area, Wheeler Road, State Road 32, the Monon Bridge is right here. So this Block C was created on that property. Later in 2020, Block C was further platted into Lot 1, Lot 5, and then the remainder of Block C. So 2 lots in Block C were created in a further plat. So same area, Lot 1, Lot 5, and then the remainder area left in that block. In May 2021, Block C was again platted, creating Lot 2 and the remainder of Block C. So 1 lot and 1 block. So Lot 2 was created here, and the remainder of Block C. Lastly, in January 22, Block C was platted for the final time, creating Lot 3 and Lot 4, and at this time, Block C no longer exists. Lot 3 and Lot 4. So just to recap, it was 1 block, subdivided into 2 lots in 1 block. A 3rd lot was created, and then 2 more lots were created. So 1 block equaled 5 lots in the end. So when we talk about non-residential, that includes retail and commercial uses, office and business, educational and religious institutions, and industrial uses. So there are a couple disclaimers, is that the data does not include land where home businesses are operating out of. The data includes only land that is developed for non-residential uses, meaning if a shed on a private property was being used as a business, that was not included. So land for farm stands and farming was not included in this data. And the data does not include opportunities for redevelopment, additions, or expansions. So this data that we're gonna see tells us how much non-residential land is ready for construction and not ready for construction. So the unit of measurement, if you recall back to the residential presentation, we used unit as the main form of measurement. For non-residential data, you'll see acre and lot. However, not all development has lots created yet. So an acre is a more accurate way to represent the non-residential stock. So, and how big is an acre? It's about 1 high school football field if you minus the end zones. And that's still just a little bit over 1 acre, but it's an approximate. So the same block that we just looked at that was divided into those 5 lots is about 7 acres worth. So when we look at averages, what we received through a permit basis, in 17 we received 11 non-residential permits, 2018, 12, etc. It was about a 5-year average of 16 non-residential permits a year. That means that in 2017, 11 new buildings were permitted, 2018, 12 new buildings, etc. Meaning about 16 new buildings of non-residential were permitted a year. Now this differs when we look at detailed development plans. So again, these are detailed development plans that were approved. So in 2017, 11 DDPs were approved. In 18, another 11, and so on. So about 18 detailed development plans approved a year, which means that in 2017, 11 new projects were approved, and so on, meaning about 18 new projects are approved a year. To compare, what is actually permitted differs than what is actually approved, because not all DDPs will get built. Just because they're approved does not mean they will actually build. And just because, can't see the screen. Well, the DDP, essentially what the last line was saying is that if the DDP was approved, it could have been approved in a different year than when the permit actually came forward and was built. So now looking at the non-residential data, again, I've chosen to organize this data into 3 categories: lots, blocks, and what is not platted. So lots involve what has been approved for construction through a detailed development plan, and what has not been approved for construction, meaning there's no detailed development plan. So lots were created through platting. Blocks were platted. They're not ready for construction and no lots exist. And what has not been platted is not ready for construction. No lots exist. So acres is a more accurate way to represent the data. And predicting becomes challenging for the areas that are in blocks and has not been platted, because again, in Wheeler Landing, there's currently 10 lots and 3 blocks in Wheeler Landing. They have been platted, so that's about 67 acres. Again, Wheeler Landing is 321 acres. So there's about 253 acres that are not platted. We cannot predict how many lots or blocks will be platted in that 253 acres. 3 blocks could be 10 lots, 5 lots, or 20 lots. So acres gives us an exact number of data versus of what exists versus what is unknown, essentially. So again, just a reminder, this data tells us how much the non-residential land is ready for construction and not ready for construction. We're organizing it into lots, blocks, and area that is not platted. So looking at the non-residential acreage, 58% of all non-residential zoned land has been platted into lots. That's this entire blue section of the pie right here. It's about 2,800 acres. 23% of all non-residential zone land has been platted into blocks. That's the orange section of the pie right here. It's about 1,100 acres. And 19% of all non-residential zone land has not been platted at all. It's about 933 acres. What this means is that 2,800 acres exist today in the form of lots, individual lots. 49% of those lots are approved for construction or have already been built. 9% of those lots that are platted are not approved for construction, but the lots do exist. Meaning they have either not submitted a detailed development plan or a DDP is still under review currently. With the 1,100 acres that exist today in the form of blocks, we anticipate future construction will occur once the lots are created through the platting process, DDPs are approved, and for the acreage that is not platted, we do anticipate future platting and eventual construction once it's platted either in lots or blocks and then replatted. Lots are further created from those blocks, DDPs are approved. So the total acreage of the entire pie is 4,865 acres of non-residential land. So 648 lots have been platted so far. That's the blue pie. 545 lots have approved development plans. That's just this section of the blue. 103 lots do not have approved development plans. 61 blocks have been platted, and 933 acres have not been platted so far. So that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any for you. Thank you.
Caleb, help me on page 47. on page 47, the 2,820 acres that exist today in the form of lots. And then you say that a percentage of the lots platted are either approved of the construction. Shouldn't that be 85% then of the lots platted? Because that would be, 2,393 would be 85% of the 2020.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
trying to get to the,
And so what you're looking at, you're not looking at the total number of lots that are platted, which is, I think, 49%, but you're looking at what percentage of that is amount. So it should be right, 85% of the 2820.
okay, right here. So can you please reiterate?
Okay, yeah. What I understood you say was that there are 2,820 acres that exist today in the form of lots. And a certain percentage of those lots platted are either approved for construction or already constructed, which you said is 2,393 acres. So that 2,393 should be 85% of the 2,820.
Correct, yeah, what you see there, the 49%, the 9%, that's the split of the 58%
Okay.
lots.
All right.
So if you looked at just within the lots itself, how many have development plans, yeah, I believe it's somewhere around 85%.
Okay, cool.
But that's just of the lots, not of all non-residential land.
Just of those, yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Other thing I noted when I looked at these numbers was on the permits and the buildings, which is back on page 39. And I think the 5-year average is basically 16 permits and 16 new buildings. And I just for fun, was wondering, well, how have we done the last 2 years? And if you looked at the average for the first 3 years, it would average out to be 13. In the last 2 years, the average is 20. So basically, in the last 2 years, we're seeing a lot more buildings coming to fruition than we had in the past. So we're up the last 2 years about 65% above what they were in the 3 years prior to that. So I was just kind of interested, and that's good indication that there's some good growth happening in Westfield.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, so looking at, I mean, the reason why I took a 5-year average is that's just kind of my own interpretation of the data, that's the most relevant years to draw data from. I could go back from 2016 to 2010 and show the numbers there, but that won't be as accurately reflected in what's happening today.
Which would probably be even smaller, so we're seeing we would hope, a progressive increase.
Right, it actually kind of fluctuates sporadically back then,
Is it?
so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I can show you that later if you'd like, but
All right, thank you. Councilors, any questions?
I got a question. Caleb, so if we approve a project today, do we kind of have an average lead time of approval to plating? Just to kind of get an idea of what business we're doing today will come to fruition when?
yeah, that's a challenging question to kind of forecast. I guess it really kind of depends on the readiness of the project. Multiple different scenarios that we could go down, but to shortly answer your question, there's not really an average time frame that I could pinpoint because every project throughout the city is very case by case on how it develops. But depending on if the property is already platted, like the Wheeler Landing example, if there was a property that had already been platted for lots and it just needed to be rezoned, such as like a PUD or something, then that would probably be a faster process than rezoning a property from scratch. Then it would have to go through platting, multiple other platting processes, development plan approval, and then permitting construction. So I'm not sure if I gave you the answer you're looking for.
Now,
but-
the answer I want maybe doesn't exist, but I
Okay.
appreciate the insight for sure.
Yeah, it would be, I think piggybacking upon what Councilor Willis said, the problem is that not all detailed development plans come to fruition. And so while we're tracking along, we think we've got a lot of stuff approved and in the pipeline. We might not have quite as much as we think, right?
Yeah, and that's actually a good point to bring up, is that when I give the disclaimer that not all development plans will get built, I looked into how many approved development plans have actually built, and that's about 96%. So it is pretty close to being built whenever a development plan is approved, but there's still about 4% of them that never come to fruition.
Okay, good, interesting. Any comments? Well, Caleb, thank you very much. Great work here. Interesting data.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. Next item on our agenda is really a council discussion, questions about the midterm budget review process. Counselor, any comments here? Well, unfortunately, Jeremy's not here tonight, so I'm going to limit. I had a couple questions as we get ready. He's in the sky. All right. Okay. Perfect. All right. Jeremy, I had sent you a couple questions I had. First question is, well, first of all, thanks again for putting together the midterm budget that you reviewed with us last time. There had been a few questions that came out of that for the public to know. And the form that Jeremy had used was actually a form that the Finance Committee had used for a quarterly report. And that's not our traditional normal report, quarterly or monthly report that's generated by the clerk's office. So for simplicity, Jeremy and I went through this together. We talked to several people in the clerk's office, the other counselors, and we're going to revert back to and use the traditional form that is generated by the clerk's office on a monthly basis for our quarterly and semi-annual reports. And so we went back and the clerk's office took their standard form and added Jeremy's comments from last meeting to that form. So that is now available for everybody to review. Okay. As I reviewed it, I had a couple questions. First of all, I noted that one of the areas where we were kind of over budget was in the administration salary department. And part of the reason was that Jeremy has come on in his new position right around the first of the year. And last year's budget was budgeted around Todd Bertrand. And about 2/3 of Todd's salary had come from the fire department and 1/3 from administration. So with Jeremy coming on, that needed to be corrected this year. And we've asked that the clerk's office take action to reappropriate the funds from the fire department's budget into the administration's budget so that we've got a better handle on that. And I've been told that that's doable and can be done. Second question that I had was on the Grand Park. And long about, we approved the budget in October of last year. And in December of last year, we had a change in Grand Park, and William Knox formed his own company, LSG, and he entered into a contract with the RDC in the city in mid-December. Part of that contract in the agreement, as I recall having attended some of those meetings, was that he was initially to take 8 employees with him into his new company, which should have amounted to a budget reduction. And at that time, he was speculating that the reduction would be about $552,000. Now, as I've learned through the grapevine and through William, I understand that actually that number of employees was reduced to 5 employees. So 5 city employees left and joined Williams. So what I was looking for and what I've asked for is to give us some information as far as what the corresponding reduction should be in the Grant Park budget to account for those employees, and were they in fact reduced as they were to have been reduced. So At this point, I think Jeremy's working on that, and you'll be able to get back to us perhaps at the next meeting. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can keep talking about it. In my response to you, I asked if there was a mechanism to reduce a budget. I'm not familiar with that. Cindy would have to, relay what that is. I can tell you that Grand Park is tracking well under budget as it is. So I think it's kind of naturally happening, but Matt can allude to that a little bit more than I can. But I would like to hear from Cindy if there is some sort of mechanism to officially reduce a budget. I've not heard of that.
Yes, there is, Jeremy.
Does that require any kind of council action, or how do we go about that?
Yeah, we have to do a reduction, and we'd have to ask for an additional appropriation and then do an appropriation reduction, and then send that to DLGF.
What would the additional appropriation be? You lost me there.
On the Grand Park budget, is that, there was like.
Yeah, so we're not adding funds to the budget. So there
We're
wouldn't be
transferring within the budget, within that
I got it.
department.
so you would do an additional appropriation to To
Yes,
what
and then do a
line?
reduction, that's just how it's done.
okay.
Hey, Jeremy and Cindy, this is Troy. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So what would be the purpose of that, Mike? I mean, in my view, I mean, just, as we go through the budget on a quarterly basis, if we're under budget, I mean, we're under budget. I mean, why not just make a note of it, and then that way we change it next year? I mean, I understand the additional appropriation if we're going to be over budget in a certain area, and we can do that and keep it, keep it on point, that we're going to be under budget because of, whether we move somebody from here to there, or we did, the contract with William, that sort of thing. But I mean, why even go through the hassle of submitting it back to DLGF? Why not just note it, note the presence of it, and then for our budget next year, make it appropriate?
Yeah, Troy, I don't disagree with you. And I don't know that we have to actually take that action. But when things like this happen, I think, and there is a change after the budget happens and we speak about eliminating people and stuff, then that should become our basis for this year. And then there should be some type of a line item explanation by the director of Grand Park saying, yeah, we made an adjustment at the end of the year, so the first of this year, our budget should come in X number of dollars under, and we are tracking at a certain level relative to what that new number should be.
I agree with all that. I'm
Yep.
just saying, going back through the DLGF process, I think
Yeah, I agree.
isn't going to do it for saying.
Could we hear from our Director of Grand Park?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Matt Training here, representing Grand Park. I do believe in that process in going through the budget that William at the time had reduced the salary overall at that point. What we were dealing with, and Councilman Fry brought it up at the last discussion when we were talking about the Q2 budget. There was a overage we're trending towards an overage in the consulting line for Grand Park. Really what happened between the October timeframe when the budget was approved to December when the budget was finally approved, when the LSG contract was finally approved, there was an addition of scope, which did draw more people out of Grand Park, again, reducing our salary line, but it did go into that consulting. So it's a bit of a shift there. Again, I do want to note that we will be under budget this year, barring anything catastrophic to the facility. And I've been monitoring that throughout the process to ensure that we are well under budget and come in with a surplus.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
One other thing really quick, just to comment. I do know that William Knox Legacy Sports Group will be providing an update to the Redevelopment Commission at the September 19th meeting. Just, again, realigning with what the scope of work that he's doing, the value that he's adding in his line, and just really following. And he can help answer some of these questions that'll be done at that presentation. Again, That's Monday, September 19th.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that insight. As we go through the budget process, and I will not be here I understand there's going to be a meeting on the 31st. I just want to make sure that all the counselors are on the same page with respect to what we'd like to see in that meeting. So are there any comments, questions?
Oh, sorry, I was hoping format-wise that we could actually have all the departments come and explain to our full council their budget needs for next year. Of course, highlighting any changes that they need and explaining why their current budget is or isn't working, and have that be recorded and available for the public as well. That would be my hope. Not sure
And
it can be
Cindy, as
accomplished.
it pertains to that, our current plan is every director has written a short summary of changes that will all be provided to you all in a binder with the proposed budget. In the essence of time, I thought we could provide that in advance, and then you all could come prepared with questions. They will all be there to answer those questions. But it's going to be a really lengthy meeting if we have a budget presentation by each person. And if that is the desire of the council, we can arrange for that to happen. We were hoping to get some of those questions answered with the binder. And then that way we can focus on the really intensive questions that you all may have.
I appreciate that there's the interest in time, and I do want to be, wary of that. But the question is, when we get the binder or something like that, it's not available generally to the public, and so I worry that we're going to be missing out on an opportunity like that for people to understand how their tax dollars are being spent.
Yeah, that's fair. So what we'll do, as long as you're good with it, is we'll have the directors individually read into the record their budget comments that would be in that binder, and then give you a Q&A period, either at the end of each one of those or at the end of all of it. Does that work?
It does with me. I'm only one of seven, so.
That's what I was hoping for. Jake?
Very good. That'll be our plan.
But we still have the availability to meet with any department head and ask through like we have in the past, right? I mean, nothing's changing there.
Yes, sir. That's the intention of the August 31st special meeting, and then you'll have an entire month and a half basically to meet individually and work through some of those things prior to the official budget introduction in October.
So to Cindy's point, if in the reading of the public record and everything is before the public, if a member of the public has a question about the budget for us, we have plenty of time to address the question and serve the member of the public who has a question based on the presentation and reading into the budget, correct?
That is correct. We'll have just over a month, almost 6 weeks, actually.
So, I mean, in point of transparency, or I know what you're asking for, Cindy, because we always ask for it, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy, I would have one question for you, and that is, when do you anticipate us receiving that information? You said you're going to try to get it out prior to the meeting on the 31st.
Yes, our goal is a week in advance. Me being remote this week doesn't help, but we do have a few revisions. We've got our Form 1 submitted on Gateway for the state. We may have a few revisions to that. All this information, for the most part, is out there available now from a budget perspective, with exception of whatever changes happen over the next few days. And then the binders will come just as soon as we have that finalized and have them put together.
Thank you.
So Jeremy, just to clarify, this will be a public meeting then, and it'll be recorded?
Yes, sir. It's a noticed public meeting on the 31st, I believe at 9 a.m.
Perfect.
Let me verify that. Yes, at 9 a.m. on the 31st in the council chambers.
Thank you, and I just, from a personal standpoint, I'm going to be out of town, so that'll let me go back and listen to it, and then we can visit when I get back, so appreciate that very much. Councilors, any other questions during the budget? Hearing none then, we will move on to old business. Our first item under old business is ordinance 20-25, North Point 2 PUD. This item had a council introduction on July 13th of 2020. APC public hearing on February 16th of 2022. A second public hearing on August 15th of 2022. It received a negative APC recommendation on August 15th, last week. And Pam Howard is going to introduce this ordinance.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Pam Howard of the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for your consideration, we have a proposed new planned unit development district to be known as the North Point 2 PUD. This 180-acre site is located on the north side of State Road 38 between Anthony Road and Hinkle Road and is currently zoned AGSF1. It is northeast of and adjacent to the existing North Point PUD. The proposed ordinance accommodates continuation of the existing North Point PUD and also includes 5 residential lots. Again, public hearings were held on February 22nd and August 15th of this year. Several changes were made to the ordinance following the public hearing. And the APC did forward an unfavorable recommendation on August 15th with a vote of 5-2. Chris Wilkes is here with Holiday Properties to make a brief presentation, after which both he and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam, for the introduction. Mr. President, members of the council, for the record, my name is Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties with offices at 231 South College Avenue in Indianapolis. Let me begin. In light of recent developments, in particular, the receipt of a letter of intent from a global advanced manufacturing company this past Thursday evening that outlined the terms to develop the entire parcel as its new corporate campus. Yesterday evening, around 7:30 p.m., I sent an email to all of you city councilors as a group outlining 3 things I was asking you to consider in advance of tonight's hearing. 1, I wanted to summarize our efforts to provide a robust transition area between the Anthony Road residents and the business park. 2, considering the comp plan has been a document that has been part of this discussion from day one, and further considering that the comp plan document is a fairly large document, as we know, we wanted to highlight some of the text in the comp plan that we believe suggests that a business park is a proper use at this location as compared to other land use options. And thirdly, I wanted to alert you all to the receipt of the LOI that I mentioned at the outset here. There might have been some questions as to the reason and the form of my email. So I just wanted to take a moment to clarify the purpose of that email was to communicate to all of you at the same time all the information and the present circumstances that we believe are part of this petition to be considered tonight. So with that, let's begin with our efforts to provide robust transition from day one. Okay, thank you. So currently, this is an evolution of the a number of concepts we put forth to provide transition. As mentioned, as Pam mentioned, the ordinance now includes about 25 acres dedicated for what we're calling conservation lots. They would be residential lots ranging from 3 to 5 acres that would provide a transition from the Anthony Road residents. As I've mentioned in my public testimony time and again, from day one, we've recognized the residents there. We've recognized the sensitivity to them, And we have tried from the outset to provide buffering. We have not ever not addressed that. Oh, Kevin. Yeah. What have I done here? You want to do it for me? Thank you. This is one element that we wanted to mention here. You know, as I mentioned, you know, when we looked at this area, we've recognized the historical nature of this area and frankly the historical nature in Westfield that we all are very proud of. And so one of the things that we tried to do from the outset, and this was from some discussions we had had with city leadership and councilors in particular, just a little thing, but I wanted to point it out that, you know, we here in Westfield have an equestrian history, as we all know. And so along State Road 38, and we've written into the ordinance here as part of an element of our park, is that we will provide this ranch-style fencing that you'll see here in Westfield, so in the Grand Park area in particular. So it's just something that we're trying to do to integrate a business park with the nature of Westfield. That's just another look at an entrance to the road there, or entrance to the park. Thank you, Kevin. Couple elements of the ordinance that I would like to highlight, if I could. One, as I was speaking to, again, we have a conservation lot residential area, minimum of 25 acres there. We have prohibitions against overhead doors on the west, north, or south facades in Area 1. That's the area that's adjacent to the immediate east of this conservation lot area. Buffering, we have a 6-foot mound between the conservation lot area and Area 1. So, and then we have a 100-foot building setback from any boundary in the district to provide additional setbacks from adjacent landowners. We also are introducing this tree preservation requirement on the boundary. We'll show up another exhibit that will detail that. But right there at the southwest corner in that first entrance area, that's the closest to the Anthony Road and our business park. If you go to the next one, Kevin, thank you. Just again, provide a little history of our efforts to provide the transitioning. This was early on in our discussions. We thought one transition area or transition option would be to provide a single-family development. This would be consistent in our North Point, existing North Point project, where you have the Lennar Homes Coventry project that was included in that PUD to provide transition from the Grassy Branch residents at that time. That single-family residential buffer was not received particularly well, so we introduced this concept of a public park area, having 10 acres of parkland. You know, we squared off this little notch here, and we would dedicate it as either green space or ideally find a way to put it in the hands or donate it in the hands of a park department, be it Westfield, Hamilton County, or Township, or Washington Township. Bring some park like elements in here, walking trails, park amenities. Excuse me. Frankly, provide a 10-acre public benefit to the park while also providing an amenity to this business park that companies are finding attractive in their search for real estate locations and communities in which to locate their business. Which then brings us to, we touched upon there, the conservation lot. This is the tree preservation area. I just wanted to use this exhibit to point that out here. Kevin, please. I also wanted to use this exhibit to illustrate something here. Back when we were working with the 10-acre park, we had 360 feet of linear feet between the residents here on Anthony Road to what would be the boundary of the business park. 360 feet, 10 acres. With this new buffering option, we added to the 360 feet 400 additional linear feet with this conservation lot area. And then with 100 feet setback, we have a total of 860 feet of transition. So, as I mentioned, so I just want to conclude with those transition options, recognizing that we received a negative vote at the APC last Monday. I'm sure there are reasons for that, but I would doubt that those reasons would include our lack of sensitivity and efforts to provide transition uses. There may be other ideas on how to provide those transition uses, and I would say we remain open to those. But I just wanted to remind everybody on this council and in the audience today of our efforts to provide the transition uses and to be very, very sensitive to that from day one. The comp plan. The comp plan was a document that surfaced dominantly from the outset. And as we know, that comp plan was issued on February 12th of 2007. We went back and looked at that to remind those that were part of that comp plan and maybe introduced for the first time those that were not. To summarize the land use plan, the comp plan summarized 6 types of land uses on page 23. Rural residential, suburban residential, commercial, and categories called highway corridors, business parks, and villages. We highlighted in red the 2 that pertain to our project, highway corridors and business parks. Thank you, Kevin, please. Okay, let's speak to highway corridors. On page 53, highlighted in bold, the text of the comp plan. And I want to remind, the comp plan, as we know, is a map and text. It's not just text or just the map. The entire document needs to be read together with both the map and the text. So we looked at the map, and we'll come back to that in a second. Highway corridors. Comp plan went to say major highway corridors have an enormous impact. They used the word enormous. They just didn't say impact. They went so far as to describe highway corridors as having an enormous impact on the community's appearance, economic vitality, and convenience. Perhaps because the use of the word enormous, the comp plan went on to outline in development policies. It said on the top of page 54, permit retail or residential development only, being emphasized, in designated village or downtown locations on US 31, State Road 32, State Road 38, and 146th and Town Road. That's the comp plan. That's the text from the comp plan. Please, Kevin. Business parks. Spoke about business parks. In the development policies that guide the development of business parks on page 56, 2 stand out. Promote development of the business parks as campus-like settings. You can read that as you may, and you can interpret what that means. I view that as holiday properties. We develop large-scale business parks. We do not develop a handful of acres, a 3 acres there, a 5 acres there. We do not put a collection of steel buildings up and say, hey, we develop those buildings. We develop parks. That's what we do. We have no interest in developing anything but large-scale business parks, and that's what we do. That's what we did with the North Point 1. At 180 acres, North Point 2 certainly has that campus scale sought with this policy. There's probably a reason why the LOI was received and submitted, because that company is not interested in assembling a handful of acres to put up a couple steel buildings. Comp plan also goes on to say, locate industrial uses in areas that are removed from residential neighborhoods and other uses that would be detrimentally affected. We recognize the residents on Anthony Road. As I have said, we have recognized that from day one, so I am acknowledging that they exist, okay? So, and as we have shown, we have tried many a form, and we remain committed to providing transition uses to those residents. But I would argue, if you look at the text of this document and you say, locate industrial uses in areas that are removed from residential neighborhoods, I would submit to you that our North Point 2 Business Park checks that box too. Rural Northeast, let's look at that. The comp plan categorized these rural residential areas as one area in the Northeast, one in the Southwest. Goes on to say the policy of this plan is that these areas will be designated as rural for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable. Didn't say anything about permanency in the Northeast. We'll compare that to the Southwest area in just a second. It says, however, when this plan is updated in 5 years, this policy will be reevaluated in light of any potential changes in market conditions, public service, and facility changes, et cetera, et cetera. The point here is it was recognized in 2007 that the area in the rural Northeast was deserving of a reconsideration. It had text that plainly stated that. In fact, right here, it says at the bottom of page 33, it says plan update. Reassess the rural policies as part of a 5-year update to the plan in light of any changes in circumstances. Let's contrast that with the Southwest area. Recognize that the Southwest area of the township identified as rural on the map is unique relative to other rural areas. Again, you can read this. I hope that you did when I sent this yesterday. But it says here, as such, the policy of the plan is that the character of the Southwest rural should remain essentially unchanged. New growth and development in this area should be reviewed with the intent of ensuring that it is compatible both with the use and density perspective with minimal impact on the natural and visual environment. If the comp plan wanted the Northeast to remain unchanged, it could have just copied and pasted this text and put it right up there. Did not. Economic data. North Point 1, we touched on this a little bit in the APC narrative. We're very proud of North Point 1. I think in commentary there were people even on the APC that suggested that they too were proud of North Point 1. So it was a positive thing for Westfield. Acknowledged our efforts as the developer in establishing North Point 1. I'm proud of it. We've attracted corporations that have invested to date over 53 net acres, $66 million in assessed value. It's about $1.25 million of assessed value. With 130 net remember, we're talking about a 180-acre project. When we net out either the 25-acre rural resident or the conservation lot of the 10, you know, using that same more or less 1.25 or so, we would estimate at full build out that this corporate campus could generate an AV of 175 million. I don't really want to dwell on that too much because I think it was acknowledged even in the APC hearing that clearly our park will generate more AV as compared to other options. I don't think there was any question about that. So, but it didn't seem to move others, but I just wanted to point out for the benefit of this hearing and this council gathering, I wanted to remind them of our economic data. Conclusion, Kevin, please. I wrote some things down here, but maybe I'll just kind of summarize it this way. With our North Point 1 project, we have proven, humbly offered, that Holiday Properties can do what I think the city wants us to do. We can attract high-quality corporations to locate in this community as versus other communities. We have proven, humbly offered, to be responsible custodians of that park and have developed the North Point 1 in a high-quality way. We are asking for the chance to develop the North Point 2 in that same manner. The receipt of this LOI is another example that we can do that. We can provide that for this community. We can attract that high-quality investment. We are asking for that chance with North Point 2. We are prepared, and we remain prepared to this moment. If there are other ideas on how we can observe or strike that right balance of transition, important transition, might add. It's not just we're going to throw that in. It's an important transition. Someone asked me, one of the residents asked me at the APC hearing afterwards, what would you do? What would you do if you lived here? And I said, well, you know, one thing I would like to have is if the project was going to be developed, I'd like the developer who was developing it to be sensitive as we are attempting to be. That's what I would like to see. And we are going to do that. We're prepared to do that. I would also offer, though, while we consider the Anthony Road residents, and we have a larger city constituents to consider as well. You guys just had a discussion about mid-year budgets. Well, I'm sure AV has a way to weave into that. So we believe, well, let me close with this. As I said, we remain to this moment open to any ideas and thoughts on how we can achieve the transition and also achieve the business park, the text that was outlined in the comp plan from 2007 in this park. So with that, appreciate your time and your allowing me to present. And I'll close and I guess I'll remain available for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councilor, comments, questions?
I got a question, Chris. This LOI, what can you tell us about it? Are you under like a NDA that you can't disclose any details, or what can you tell us about this?
Yes, I am, in terms of confidentiality, Councilor Willis. This is a company that we have been in discussions with for over a year. It's been on again, off again. They've been examining other options for sure. They've been trying to figure out what they want to do. I even reached out to them prior to the lead up to the APC to see where they were. I was hoping that perhaps we could include them in that discussion. They, at that stage, were not prepared to move or move forward, I should say. And so, but it's a global company, advanced manufacturing, and in our discussions and some of our planning efforts with them, they want to include office uses. They want to have research and development facilities as well as advanced manufacturing facilities.
Do you have any idea how many acreage they're looking to secure for that, or?
Well, they are looking to develop all of those facilities within the entire parcel. So I really, obviously there will be a phased approach to that. Where they'll have some initial buildings right out of the gate and then others to follow. I mean, that's a large parcel but I don't want to give you well, put it this way, it is not going to be a single large building that will span the entire project. It'll be a series of buildings oriented, probably developed in phases, but I want to be careful there because I really want to be respectful of the confidentiality of that. But in general, that's what I can tell you.
And one more question, I'll turn it back to you guys. Any idea of the timeline they're working under? I mean, now that's before us, we have 90 days, I think it is, to weigh in on this. Now that's back to council. If we would delay a vote on this to let this flush out, is 90 days enough, or are we a year or two down the road on this?
Are you asking what their timeline is for their initial investment?
Just a timeline of when we would be able to put some meat on the bone here.
I spent the weekend having, in light of the receipt of this late Thursday, I did move my son back to Purdue on Friday. So I was a little busy. But I did have conversations with them throughout the day on Friday and then over the weekend. I informed them of the decision on Monday night. They were surprised. But they understand where we're heading, tonight. I think they are prepared at the right time and the right forum to have conversations with city leadership.
So
Tonight
like an
was not the
executive
night.
session, are you talking like an executive session where they can maintain confidentiality? or?
Yeah, I think their council and city council and could arrive at a forum, be it executive session or otherwise, but I think, my sense is from my discussions with them, they're prepared to move in the matter of, in the next few weeks to a month. This isn't like they're gonna sit on this for 6 months.
Appreciate it.
To be clear, I want to make sure I understood what you said. I want to make sure I understood it correctly. So we've got areas 1, 2, and 3, areas 1, 2, and 3. Did I understand correctly? I heard you say that they're going to develop in all of those areas. I want to make sure that I correctly understood that they will be the entirety of the development in all of those areas.
Their intent is to consume all of areas 1, 2, and, well, I guess 2 is now there's just areas 1 and 2. There used to be a third, I think. So, no, the intent is to consume all of that project.
So this would be a large,
Yes,
large opportunity, large campus for one
for
entity.
one company, yes, with a series of facilities.
But the roughly 30 acres to the west is still, that's not a part of.
Oh, they want the transition area. They actually like the park idea. That's where we kind of left it off with them. They've seen this, and they're fine with this too, but as I mentioned at the APC, my preferred transition option was the park. But I'll leave it to them, but they like the park aspect. But again, they're prepared to, be it the park or this conservation lot or otherwise, they also want a transition area between the business park and the residents.
Is there anything from a zoning perspective that would allow us to shelf this for a period of time and kind of flesh out these details, or legally, what are we playing with here?
Obviously, it all depends on the developer's timeline, and as Chris said, I'm happy to discuss a mechanism to facilitate that discussion. There is one available. There are several available. But you're right, that there is a time by which you have to act. Otherwise, there's an option, I believe, Kevin, under our process, we discussed this, or Kevin, a couple of years ago, where you can go through it again. But as Mr. Wilkes said, I don't know if that's a viable option, but it does exist for there to be a resubmittal if you don't find sufficient time to act within the time allowed by statute. But if the part of the speed bump is facilitating a discussion, if the developer so desires, that would allow folks, the council, the mayor, everybody to have an opportunity to vet some additional considerations, there are viable options to do that before that can be made public.
Yeah, I would just offer, I think you know.
Correct, yeah, and you're right, it's a 90-day timeline. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm
Wilkes,
sorry.
I just wanted to add that. That's right. Thank you,
No,
Kevin.
I you know, recognize where I think we, you know, are, and, you know, I guess I would ask for a little more time for these discussions to be allowed to occur. And then council can reconvene in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks, and it can decide on the matter.
Hey, Chris, this is Troy Patton.
Yep.
Real quick. This is not my idea, but it's someone else's, but I think it's a great idea. You know, first of all, as you know, I mean, I'm a no, because I'm going to vote for the citizens who live here today in Westfield versus those who don't. So, I mean, you know, my first inclination is obviously to go with the people that already live there. We've already talked about that. But what about the people what about the city council signing an NDA to not disclose, obviously, who this client is, so that we understand who it is, and I mean, at least it'll give us a little bit of thought and process, as opposed to just saying, hey, somebody came up on Thursday. You know, like I've told you in the past, you know, this is a bigger question of the city. We don't actually necessarily need the tax base. It would be nice, obviously, to have somebody like this, but at the same time, I think, you know, we'd want to know who it is, and whether they're serious. I mean, if they were ready to pull the trigger, I think, you know, there'd be other discussions. But I mean, just a LOI, they could be, like you said, they're on again, off again. You know, I think we're going to end up in the exact same place. Again, I'm not saying I'm not willing to delay it, but at the same time, I'm you know, is there a way to sign an NDA for everybody on the city council?
Before, this is Andy, before I go on, or you go on, I'd just like to say that the statement, "we don't need the tax base," is one person's opinion.
That's why I was the one talking, Andy. I'm the one who said it.
If the question is, you know, if the question is, can the city council or city leadership sign an NDA? That's really not for me to.
So I'll take that, and then I'll toss it back to you. So sure. So one of the mechanisms, Mr. Patton, to facilitate these discussions is an executive session. If there are negotiations with a commercial prospect under which the council will be bound, and anybody attending will be bound by confidentiality, if the company is extra sensitive and wants to assure protections through an NDA, that's something that's also available. Certainly, we need to review it and run it past you and give it to Ms. Poindexter for review as well. But that is a viable option in addition to the executive session option that's also viable.
I don't see how we have anything to lose by doing that. I mean, it gives us more time to be thoughtful, to hear what's out there. It may not change people's mind, it may end up being a no vote, but taking time to be thoughtful in this process, we have nothing to lose by doing that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We
we do.
actually have, these poor neighbors out here have been dealing with this for years. Imagine if any one of us was weighing the prospect of this coming to their backyard. And I don't mean just the neighbors on Anthony Road. This actually impacts the broader community, all of Westfield. This was never planned for. This area was not planned for development. It still is not. I don't feel comfortable with this discussion that we have this maybe company coming and wanting to build in an area that we have not said we want to actually develop with anything. It's rural. So it troubles me that we're even going down this road. If we want to have the broader discussion, update our comprehensive plan in the public process, and not spot zone a project like this, that's different. But I don't want to see this stay on the agenda and torture the people that much more. This is getting ridiculous. But I appreciate, no, please don't, please don't. You've been a fantastic, developer here, and I appreciate that. And you've tried really hard to work with the neighbors. So again, it's not about that.
Thank you.
Chris, I would agree. Again, I appreciate everything you've done to try to work with the neighbors, to try to have a transition area. You have gone above and beyond, but the fact of the matter is that after 25 months, the AP, and several, more than two, several hearings, public hearings, we've come down to the point where the APC voted against this project. Now, I've got three separate issues with it. First of all, our comp plan, we've got to use the current comp plan. Current comp plan is a plan that has been updated with about 7 amendments over the years, so it's not a stagnant plan. It's a plan that does identify the Northeast and the Southwest as designated rural areas. I would say that you're right. If you look at the very specific language, you could say that the plan has not been updated in the Northeast where it could have been, but again, it hasn't been, and it is our current plan. And we also want to have areas in our community for all types of people. And the rural areas, the Northeast and the Southwest areas, have been designated just as that. And the neighbors moved to those, on Anthony Road, they moved to those areas with the expectation that they were going to stay rural, according to the plan. So that's my first issue. My second issue is really what were you seeking to have approved over the last 25 months? And what you said in your marketing piece here is, we foresee a mix of high-tech engineering uses along with some warehouse distribution uses that to be found in the area. But what you asked to be approved was virtually all possible items under business, with the exception of fast foods and a nightclub. So the items that you asked to be allowed to be built there were auction rooms, childcare, health fitness facilities, hotels, mortuaries, sit-down restaurants, schools for fine arts and whatnot, commercial rec properties, microbreweries, indoor theaters, self-storage facilities, trucking companies, temporary use events, bus stations, heliports, canneries, coffee roasting, food processing, granaries, grain processing, milk processing plants, warehousing, structural steel plants. Again, those uses are a long way away from the high tech that you've told us about. So that in itself is an issue with me, because I've learned over the last couple of years on the APC that unfortunately, it's what's written in the PUD that can be built. And we can all sit around here and have a vision of this wonderful corporate client coming, and at the end of the day, we could have a trucking company stuck in there, or restaurant, or hotel. The third thing that I'm concerned with is the neighbors. As Cindy mentioned, the neighbors have gone through basically through hell for the last 25 months. Every week, they're looking at in the newspaper, trying to see what's posted, what's the next meeting. Nevertheless, at the last meeting last Monday at the APC, we had approximately 35, 40 of the neighbors showed up for the public hearing. We had around 17 or 18 of them actually spoke for 3 minutes, and each one about a different topic. Their main concerns that I took away were the concerns that all of us would have. First of all, they don't believe that the project, and I'm going to speak for them a little tonight because they can't speak tonight, but they believe that the project does not meet the comp plan. They're afraid of the traffic pollution, the light pollution, the sound pollution, the water pollution, the effect on the local aquifer. The city really hasn't shown a need, if you will, for this particular parcel in this place. We heard earlier tonight that 51% of our property that's already been set aside as non-residential is not built upon. The negative impact on their property values. It's the largest investments that they have. The project would certainly dominate the landscape. All the uses have been asked for, safety issues, increased crime. So my heart goes out to them because obviously there's a lot of issues there that would greatly affect and impact a rural Northeast lifestyle. So when I look at all those, that's what I see, and I can't support your project because of that reason. I think it's a great project. I just think it's in the wrong place.
Could I respond?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for those comments, Councilor Johns. Let me touch on a few of those here. You spoke to the time, the 25 months. That's accurate. You know, we began this process, if you might recall, in, I believe it was the, summer of 2020, during the, height of COVID. We were conducting neighborhood meetings on Zoom at that time. I don't know if Zoom exists now, but even from the our initial meetings, we heard the lack of support for this project. Okay, so you ask about time. You know, maybe this is just this is how we do things. So the first transition option I showed up there was the single-family residential, right? So this is how I operate. I'm not going to offer a single or a transition option that I don't believe has the chance of existing or being developed. So we spent time having discussions with single-family residential developers to see if they would be interested in locating in that project that we mentioned. Took a few months to, remember, we're talking 2020. Took a few months to identify builders and developers in the single-family space that would have an interest in that. And I can assure you there are, but it took time. We then came back and presented that option. That option wasn't met favorably. Okay? We go back to the drawing board. Again, we want to do so thoughtfully, and it takes time. So what do? We were reminded of the discussion that occurred up in this area with regard to a park. Remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yep. And,
Okay.
and I also remember that it was a township park.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that it would have increased the taxes. So when people voted against it, they were actually voting against a tax increase, which
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. I'm not even going to comment on the reason it was approved or wasn't. I just recalled that was circulated up there. I think there were some people that thought that was maybe a missed opportunity. So we put forth a concept to try to offer that opportunity, albeit in a smaller scale again with the 10 acres. So we spent time trying to have discussions with parks departments who would accept responsibility for that project, for that 10 acres. We identified at least one, okay? But it takes time to do that. That explains 2 tranches of time in regards to those 2 options, okay? Now, does it explain the 25 months? I'd have to go back to my calendar and notes and say, well, what did we do from July of 2020 to January of 21? I could go back and do that. All I know, Councilor Johns, it takes time to come up with what we believe were thoughtful and real transition uses. Again, this transition use was very important to us. It has been from day one. I don't take it lightly. So I'm not going to just flip it and say, oh, we're going to do a little buffer area, or we're going to do a little green space. I wanted to be thoughtful about it. Lastly, the conservation lots. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not so sure. After the park idea failed to garner support, someone's suggested, well, you know what? If the rural residential is what they want, maybe we should just try to take 25 acres and make it rural residential. I'm not in love with that transition option, but I offer it as if others are, we'll do it. I don't think it does anything for the business park, to be honest with you. It's not an amenity. If you're Abbott Labs, do you really care about that you next to 5 4-acre lots? I don't know. But, they had to probably challenge me to get me to agree to that. Because I was very skeptical and I really thought the park idea was the best. So I'll own that one, that it took a long time to convince me that this was even a good idea. And I'm not sure I'm there now. I'm just being, as I've always been, Counselor, and I would think you would agree, I've always been very honest and direct, okay? So those are all fair. Let me go back to the use restrictions that you mentioned. Very similar to the options here on the transition. I feel like we've been kind of bidding against ourselves a little bit because we put forth options, we don't like it. We hear comments like, even respectfully, your comment about right project, wrong location. I haven't heard anybody say, you know what, here's a good location for that project. It's just no, 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 no. So you mentioned use restrictions, and you obviously have done a lot of digging on those, and good for you. But we've had discussions at the APC on which you sit on, and not once did anybody say, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation about use restrictions? I could have came out and said, you know what, I'll exclude these 10 uses. Would you vote yes for it? You might have said, my guess is that given the history of this project, it would have said, thanks for the 10 that you're excluding, still not interested. Wrong place, right project, wrong location. So I would say you, in particular, Mr. Johns, as a member of that APC, has had every opportunity to reach out to me and say, Chris, can we sit down and talk about use restrictions? If that was what you were concerned about, you have had 2 years to share that with me. And you have not. So I'm prepared to sit down with you one-on-one and talk about use restrictions if that is the last thing holding you up.
I've had the same concerns, and I know that I have expressed it a few times, but not in detail and not in writing
Yeah.
to edit it. And it was because I did not want to go down the path of trying to see you work further and edit something that I know I ultimately couldn't support.
To your credit, Councilor Plajeric, you have been a no from day one, and you have steadfastly remained a no, kind of like unconditionally. And that's fair. That's why I've granted you that space and said, she's a no. So this is kind of how things work, especially if projects of this magnitude, this is now me just speaking as whatever citizen, investor, projects of this magnitude require mutual dialogue. They just do. Our system, Councilor Patton, you have mentioned that perhaps we have too many limitations in our ability to process projects of this magnitude in our current form. I agree with you on that. This is an example. So I would just close with regard to use restrictions, Councilor Johns, I would offer, hey, let's spend 2 weeks and we'll sit down and we'll come up with any use restrictions that you would like to propose. This could, and in that 2 weeks, we could also have discussions with this company. And that would be a good use of 2 weeks. In fact, you could almost think about tailoring the petition around the new company, specifically to their uses, their intentions, right? That's a possibility.
Thank you.
If you vote it now, if you vote it no tonight, you foreclose that for at least 6 months to a year.
Here's what I'd like to say a couple of things. So appreciate all the people that have showed up, and I do understand you have been waiting a long time for this matter to conclude. I've been, I think, in 3 residences on Anthony Road. I think there's maybe a dozen that are south of that line right there. And I've met 2 other homeowners in other spots. And I've been up there umpteen times. So I know this is a tough call, but my biggest concern is are you going to get something worse down the road? I've always had that concern that at the present time, you potentially could have a single-use, clean use. I respect Mike's comments about all the potential uses, but I feel like you have more say now than you may have some point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will always just remain farmland right there. But in my opinion, you have so much leverage right now. I also know this. 3 people who live along that road have told me separately and privately differently than what the group says. So I think I respect the group. I've read every email. But I also know I've been expressed to individually and privately that we know something's going to go there eventually. We just don't want this. We just want to have a say. And I think this is your opportunity for the say. You have a Westfield developer right here who's maybe willing to even cut it back more and give you even more buffering land and tree planting, whatever. All those things maybe could be negotiated in with a delay. Clean uses, light, noise, load on the east, parking lot on the west, something that ensures that there's not North Point 3 later. All of those things are great concerns. I think when I hear things like good project, wrong location, I don't know of other locations that wouldn't cause the same kind of consternation. Bringing them down Oak Ridge at that 4-way stop at 169th in Oak Ridge. I mean, I travel that road every day. So with the gazillion kids that live in countryside, more semis on 32, I'm not sure that any other options are any better. The rural existence will be disrupted more than it is, obviously, if a business park crosses the street. I'm not disagreeing in any of that. Can there be a compromise here with this development that will be better than what may end up there in 5 years, 10 years. I respect the comp plan. It is a 2006 comp plan. Last update was 2016. This is 2022. Comp plan also says retail on 31 in some places. That's not even possible now. So although I respect it, I'm just, for you as residents, a delay gives opportunity for us to find out about the single user, and I think that's great. But I look at this as a last appeal to you to say, do you want a couple more weeks to say, we would accept it only on these terms? I mentioned several things that could really mitigate some of that. And maybe not. Maybe it's an unconditional no, like Mr. Wilks had just mentioned. And if that's the case, I understand that. But I'm just not sure that you'll ever have a better, more say than you do right now, because I think this will come back again someday. I just really do. I hear a lot of people talk about the infrastructure needs that we have and all the roads we need to widen. I know we need to, we have big hopes and dreams for downtown. We got another school referendum coming. So with the AV that this can kick out, I just, in my heart, there's no way I think that this doesn't resurface with someone else in a matter of years. I just believe that. So that being the case, I'm offering, I would absolutely vote for a delay for one more opportunity to see if there can be compromise. That's maybe not the best for all parties, but maybe acceptable for all parties. So I wanted to say that.
And I would keep in mind, I think Jake, you hit the nail on the head. $5.25 million of assessed value impacts every taxpayer in Westfield in a positive way. That's paying down school referendums that we all pay every year, every month. It does allow us to invest in our community. It certainly understand those that are negatively impacted. My heart goes out to every single one of you. I drive down Anthony Road to see my brother on a routine basis. He lives a couple miles north of that area. But we have to, in council, we have to look at the big picture of the city as a whole, and that $5.25 million is significant. It really is. I would like to make a motion to move this ball forward. I'd like to make a motion to shelf this ordinance indefinitely and go into an executive session where we can at least explore the details of the project.
This is Troy. And Scott, I appreciate those comments. I mean, on the assessed value, and I heard what Andy said, and yes, hey, by the way, this is my opinion. I've gone through the financial statements of the city. I've looked at the budgets. I've been very detailed about them. And the reality is, believe it or not, we don't necessarily have to have $5 million to make our city viable. We don't need $2 million to make our city viable. And that's why Chris and I have talked about this probably in too much depth over the last several days. The fact is, the city needs to discuss what they want for residential and what they want for industrial and what we're going to concentrate our monies on. Is it going to be more use for public works, or are we going to keep doing pet projects like Grand Park that we overspend on? That's the bottom line. It's not, Scott, and with all due respect, nobody would disagree that 2 million is better than not having 2 million. But then you can say the same thing about TIF districts that we don't need. We could release money to the schools today and actually put that money back in the coffers of the schools. But instead, we're going to have a referendum, which you've known about and everybody else has known about, just like Jake said. I'm just saying it's a bigger picture. I mean, I just wanted to make that comment. And by the way, again, my comments, nobody else's.
Yes, and this is Andy, and I'll reiterate that your statement about not needing the money, your statement about the quality or the significance of Grand Park, the administration totally disagrees with what you said.
Okay.
I have
A
family-
motion, a
Grand
motion
Junction.
has
I
been
didn't mean
made.
Grand Park. I meant
We've got-
Grand Junction. I apologize. I like Grand Park. I meant Grand Junction. If I said Grand Park, I apologize.
I
got a
will repeat that the administration totally disagrees with your statement about which Grand? Grand Junction? Either, yes.
We have a motion on the floor made by Scott Willis to basically, want to restate that, Scott?
Yeah, let's just shelf the project for a short period of time to go in an executive session to listen to the details of the project.
Do I
Can
have
I
a-
ask one question before we, the whole NDA, Troy asked a question about the non-disclosure agreement. If that could speed it up to where we don't have to do executive session, was, I believe, kind of what Troy was getting at.
I think it would probably slow it down because the company would need to draft the NDA, then you would
Okay.
need to review it and be okay with it each individually, and Ed would need to comment on it. I think, Frank, I hear your point. I hear Mr. Patton's point. I think executive session would be probably faster.
faster,
Yeah, just
okay.
48 hours notice, if it's under the right parameters.
48,
Correct. Yep.
I second.
Okay. Motion made by Scott Willis,
Can I,
seconded by Counselor Gilbert.
Can I?
Would you call the roll? This-
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
I apologize for the interruption. I need clarity here. So just because this is the motion that's made and seconded, and this is the plan that we've discussed tonight, I don't know that I've heard clearly, is the entity that you're working with, are you absolutely confident that in a short window, they will be able to present or give you the opportunity to present this information to us?
Based on my conversations with them over the weekend, I am confident that they will move as quickly as they can. I can't say it'd be 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but if my suggestion was if it's any more than 30 days, then I think we're a problem.
Let me restate my question because maybe I didn't ask it clearly.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about moving forward with a project. I'm
No,
talking about
understand
sharing
the
information.
conversation. Yes, exactly, no.
So you're talking it could be another 30 days
No, no, no,
potentially
no,
for
no.
that
Well-
conversation, for details.
I would say this, Counselor Fry, again, I've made it clear, I can only tell you what I know and what I can deliver, okay? So I'm choosing my words very carefully here. We've had to cover a lot of ground since Thursday, so,
Understand?
okay? So I understand from your perspective that the desire for additional information is needed like ASAP, okay? So, and I've relayed that to them, and I think they understand that. But remember, we're dealing with, a large company, and I guess the answer would be if terms can be identified quickly, then I think, speaking on behalf of them, I think you would find that they are willing to engage. But I really don't want to speak, when you ask confidence, I just don't, I could tell you, hey, I'm confident, that would be untrue because I don't know that to be true, okay? So I'm just being very direct with you.
So I appreciate your directness and the straightforward way which you answer that. I get that, and I understand your approach, and again, thank you for that approach. Absolutely appreciate it. But I just want to be clear that from what I'm hearing discussed here, it sounds to me like the council is anticipating this going at one speed, and that hasn't been discussed until your answer to that question, which is, we're going to try really hard, but we still don't know. So I just want to make sure that the council understands that clearly, that it's not and I think Manny had mentioned that, maybe 48 hours or something like that, even, that short of a window. It sounds like that's not necessarily lining up with anything that you have in mind.
But here's the reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, we got 90 days to vote on this. If they move slow, we just bring it back on the agenda and we vote. And, they know they have to move quick, and if they don't, then that's their loss.
So that's accurate, and the 48 hours is for the notice of the executive session. And Mr. Wilkes, to help facilitate, I guess, I can give you my cell phone after tonight.
Yep.
So that way, if somebody wants to call me, their council wants to call me to discuss, I'll be available anytime.
Sure.
So I'm looking at it like 48 hours for us to know what you know.
Yeah.
But then that's not a commitment from the company. That's just for us to find out
Yeah.
a little more detail about potential, but it's not, we're not going to have some commitment by the end of the week. But we could, by the end of the week, know what the potential is, correct?
Yeah. I think if you table this tonight and you set a goal for bringing it back at your next council meeting. I don't know, is that in 2 weeks?
2 or 3.
Yes.
Okay, so here's what, if you said, look, we'll table it tonight, but we will, short of information being obtained by council and other city leaders that is sufficient for us to continue the discussion, we will bring this back for a vote at the next council meeting, and we will vote on it. I mean, I think that is a prudent course of action, and it would be fair for everybody and say, look, to everyone, if everyone then knows that time is of the essence.
If I could, just maybe to more directly answer Mr. Willis's question. Plan Commission had a negative recommendation. Manny, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is there's a 90-day window from the point of Plan Commission certification to the council having to take action. If the council does not take action, whatever the Plan Commission's recommendation was holds. Like that's effectively the action.
That's correct. And so to simplify the motion, it just could be a motion to table until the next meeting, and then you can either vote or remove it.
Okay, I was under the impression that the petitioner had 90 days to bring it forward to the council.
No, from the date it is, the APC makes its recommendation, the council has 90 days to act on the recommendation, negative or positive, and then that recommendation, if there's no action within 90 days, the recommendation stands. Kevin's exactly right. Good question.
Thank you, Manny.
Yeah, on that, it was my understanding that the petitioner, us, we had lost control of that. I mean, if we had the opportunity to, delay it, in light of all of this, Councilor Johns, we certainly would have done that. But we didn't.
Correct.
That's an option.
You have no control over, once the APC makes its recommendation, your
Okay.
part of the process is over with.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So the current motion, I think just to set base again, the current motion is to table indefinitely, essentially. is
So
what it
I
was.
can rescind that motion
Okay.
if I'm hearing the council would feel more favorable on a shorter timeline, and Jake, I think, has to rescind his as well, does he
Correct.
not?
Yeah, I'll rescind that.
And then I'll make a new motion to table this until the next council meeting, with the intent that we go into an executive session for discussion.
Second?
Second.
Cindy, you want to call the roll?
Yeah, Joe Edwards,
No.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric,
No.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
No.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3.
Okay.
Table until next meeting.
Table to the next council meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our next item, old business, ordinance 22-336, the stormwater utility rate. And I think Jonathan Nail is going to discuss this. All right.
Hey, Mike, this is Jeremy. John
Jeremy.
he's in transition from being in person to being on the phone. Him and the team did a really nice job introducing this. Essentially, what this is an ordinance update. Our current rate is $4.16 per ERU. Based on the master plan study, the rate should be $6.13. We're proposing a graduated 5-year increase from $4.16 to $6.13. So effective on January 1, it would go to $4.55. The subsequent years would be $4.94, $5.33, $5.73, and then $6.13. Additionally, as we discussed in the first meeting or the introduction, there would be a built-in 3% cost of living adjustment for this rate in the event that we aren't able to address it every 5 years, or in the event that a needed change is not appropriate at that time. So I'm happy to do my best to try to answer any questions that you have. I think John will be joining anytime, but with that,
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you all for questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. This item is up for public hearing this evening. So we'll open the public hearing at 9:04. Kevin, do we have any cards?
I do not.
We have none. Okay, let's give it like 30 seconds and then we'll close the public hearing then. We will close the public hearing at 9:05. Counselors, any questions or comments?
The way this is written, it's a bit confusing right now. I know we had the change before. I think it said only certain properties would get that graduated 5-year ERU. And now it says the ERU shall be $6.13. But then the next thing, it says a 5-year graduated ERU shall be implemented for all properties in the district. So I don't know that it's appropriate to say the ERU shall be $6.13 when that is 5 years from now, or what it sounds like. Does that make sense?
It does. Can you point out the section for me?
Section 1, E and F. I believe you could just take out E.
As I read that, it means the first year is $4.55, graduates up to 16 or $6.13 over the 5 years. So in E, the ERU shall be $6.13 is the outcome.
In the 5th year.
Correct.
Well, it's just confusing. I mean, what is it next year? You know what I mean? I think you could just remove E.
I'm certainly willing for an entertainment of the motion to remove E. I don't disagree. It is a little confusing, but in F, it specifically states January 1st, 2023, the ERU will be $4.55.
Counselors, any other questions regarding ordinance 22-36? Hearing none then, this ordinance will be up for consideration, adoption consideration at our next meeting on September 12th. Moving on to new business. Resolution 22-114, City of Westfield adopting a preliminary strategic economic development plan for the Central In-Regional Development Authority. This has a council introduction this evening, and I believe, Manny, you're going to handle this?
Yeah, sure, just very quickly. This is a secondary step to the adoption of the ordinance, which opts the city into the RDA, which is the next document up on our agenda, so we can take them together. This just follows Mayor Fadness's presentation from the last meeting, where he outlined what it means to be, what it is and what it means to be a part of it. A couple of highlights are that there's no economic contribution to join. The initial term is 5 years, but as Mr. Edwards pointed out before the meeting to me astutely, there's a initial 5-year requirement, and then there's an opt-out with 2-year notice following that. So being part of the regional authority gives you certain say in processes and getting funds to this region that are not otherwise available, and gives a vote, one vote per community to Westfield and all members in the RDA. I will say in the attachment to this resolution, there is a comprehensive strategic plan that's being adopted by the current members That's, I believe the requirement within that is to be adopted by the end of this calendar year. So to the extent the council wants to join in and have a say in that, that would be a good time. But otherwise, from introductory purposes, there's nothing more I can add beyond what Mayor Fadden stated in the previous meeting. The next step would be to consider for adoption the ordinance that follows this. And then after that, if it is adopted, to consider adoption of the strategic plan, which is outlined in this resolution and the attachment to it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think the plan is good. I don't think the order of government is very clear in here. I remember some disputes we have had with sewer, which is long gone, but people not keeping their word, let's say. And so we've got to have something firm that says, if we're in this, we're going to commit money to it. Here's how it works, exactly. And that will be very important. I don't see that in here. I mean, it addresses grant writing and, you know, it's going to have a staff sometime. Has to have a staff.
Sure, I believe Mayor Fadden's mentioned that that is a downstream cost that is not yet to be incurred. I think everybody's absorbing any sort of grant writing processes as on a volunteer basis at the moment. But there are, and to your point, Mr. Edwards, there are bylaws that are going to be adopted through the RDA, which will very specifically outline each member's obligations moving forward.
But I think the members of this council need to see that before they, you know, this is an introduction, obviously, but there's a lot more here than meets the eye.
Yeah, and sure, and part of that, I believe, is in order to be a part of it, then you would have the say to impact what the bylaws say and how the RDA would be governed as a membership.
Because we're going to be putting money in it. I mean, that's pretty clear. And I'll end my thoughts with that. It's late, but I'd like to see the fine print in this.
If I may, the fine print is really yet to be developed. You have to remember, this isn't just a bunch of us mayors got together to do this. This is a program established and funded by the state legislature.
I'm not running it down. I just
No,
think.
I'm just saying that the fine print and the rules are very well defined by the state legislature, the legislation behind it. And, you know, we missed out on the first go-around because we hadn't joined it. And, you know, will there be some cost down the road? Yeah, there will be. But I think the return on our investment of what little investment it would be are very large. And if you don't like it, you can get out of it. But right now, there is no cost. The first,
To get out of, though.
okay,
And
then that's what you're gonna have to risk. I mean, Central Indiana shared $20 million of state funds with you. We shared zero. So it didn't cost us anything, and we didn't gain anything. So in the future, if it costs us some, I think it's well worth it. The whole concept is that the state is offering money to communities, to regions that are willing to put funds into place-building amenities. The things that many people overlook Indiana and fly over Indiana because we don't have the mountains and we don't have the oceans and we don't have the climate, so we have to work harder to provide places where our young people want to remain and stay. There are very few communities in Indiana where our young people want to stay anymore. And this is the reason why this legislature is finally recognizing that if Indiana is going to hang on to its bright young people, we have to provide things that attract young people. And that is the purpose of this funding.
Oh, I get the purpose, and I don't have my mic up again. I get the purpose. I guess what I'm concerned about is not understanding what we're committing ourselves to for the future.
Then
And
why didn't you ask Mr. Fadness, who is directing the whole thing, when he appeared in front of you last week?
Well, we basically did, but I mean, it's like no one knows. This whole thing is being developed. So again, it's one of
Okay.
those things to
Then,
want. The idea
Every other
sounds great.
community in this area has, most of you joined it, so, I mean, you don't have to. I'm just telling you
Well, I
what
know
it
we
is.
don't have to, but I mean, this is what I'm trying to weigh. So I'm trying to let others know at least what's on my mind, because in theory, it sounds great, and I would support the idea, but again, I don't know what I'm committing our city to in terms of resources. And so that part makes me uncomfortable. And now the way this comp plan that they're developing, and I've seen the different categories that's going to be developed by December. I mean, we're coming late to the party, even if we sign in now. We haven't been part of that discussion. It's just something, and I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at. I don't even know if everyone agrees with those general principles that they've outlined. But again, just something to think about.
All right, hearing no other comments. Ordinance then 2237 is a corresponding ordinance. Once we approve the resolution, that ordinance, as I understand it, is just puts into effect resolution.
Yeah, nothing further to add.
All right.
Yep.
All right, so, and that will be, both the resolution and the ordinance are up for adoption consideration on September 12th. Next issue then becomes Resolution 22-113, $6 million debt repayment for Grant Park. Council introduction this evening. Cindy, you want to kind of walk us through that?
There's not a whole lot to go through here. In general, this is a change from what we discussed at our last council meeting. There was concern about the money, if it was coming from Grant Park specifically, potentially eating into their revenues, especially considering their capital needs. So, in looking at the RDC and speaking with our representatives from the council and the RDC, as well as understanding the balances that they have right now, I think we came up with a better strategy to get this money repaid sooner rather than later. And in general, it is just $3 million by December 1st of this year, and another $3 million by December of next year, payable out of RDC. The resolution doesn't specifically say that, and that's something that I know I've brought up and Jeremy brought up as concerns, but I think that it is one of those things that is understood by the whereases and where the money comes from with the RDC managing Grant Park, but I don't know if anyone has any comments or if Jeremy wants to speak. I think, Manny, you might have something to add in terms of resolution being needed at the RDC to accomplish this.
Right, I mean, the RDC would need to take action on whatever the proposal is to then implement whatever the payments are and to initiate the voucher and warrant process to do it effectively and legally.
And would we need to do the additional appropriation for it, even though it's?
That's not a me question, sorry.
Yeah.
I defer.
So my question is, I understand this. Do we need to vote on this resolution this evening? Maybe, Jeremy, did you say that you needed to try to have us vote tonight to move this forward? Was that what you had requested?
So, yeah, and maybe a couple questions too. I mean, obviously we have the need for an RDC resolution, which as the executive director of the RDC, I'll do everything in my power to see that we can get that through the process. You have my and administration's 100% support on this and this strategy, and we appreciate that. I do have a couple of other questions, though. One being the additional appropriation. So in the resolution, it has us paying 3 million on or before December 1st, 2022, and then the rest of the balance on December of 23. So I guess my question is there a significant value in going through an additional appropriation process only to capture the dollars a month before dollars that could be appropriated into the budget? We are in budget season. We could appropriate these dollars. RDC could approve them, assuming they agree and approve their resolution. From my perspective, I feel like it would save us a step if we could have these, the first payment in January, second payment, December 1st of 2023. So that's my first question is there any flexibility in the logic or need for these monies to be paid in December 1st of 2022 to avoid the cost and the exercise associated with an additional appropriation?
I was
And then my
trying to, oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I was just trying to split it up because you said that it would probably be better from the budgeting standpoint for the revenues.
No, I agree with you. It'll be better to break it apart from a cash flow perspective. There's no question about that, and we appreciate that opportunity. I just don't understand the value of it being, effectively 1 month or 5 weeks prior to it just going through a normal appropriation process with the budget. My second question is, and it's also related to budget, is my understanding is this $6 million will be contributed by the council to the State Road 32 project.
No, we haven't decided that.
Okay, well, if council desires to spend this money in 2023, we need to have it reflected in the budget or a budget somewhere that would be approved for 23 without having to come back and do an additional appropriation. And if it's the desire for council to do just that, that's fine. But per statute or laws, I believe it has to go back in the fund that it originated from, which is okay. It's an infrastructure improvement fund. But those dollars won't be appropriated. So you'll just have another process later that you'll need to take into consideration. So I'm not opposed to it at all. I think it's great. I think it's a good win for everyone, and we can get this resolved. Just a couple questions I had that we can work on between now and the September meeting.
I'm personally fine with the January. Okay.
I am too, which takes me back to my original question at that point. First of all, we'll wonder before that, are all the other counselors?
I got
you
one
guys all
question.
ready?
Yeah, I got one question. So I know this is not likely to happen, but in the scenario that Grant Park sells in the calendar year of 2023, there is no provision for the remaining balance to be paid back at that time. Is there a reason why we're not doing that? Or, because I would think it would make sense if the park sells and the revenues from that sale would pay off the balance of the debt. Just my thoughts. I know there's a lot of if and buts there, but.
Well, it just says it can be paid beforehand.
Well, I'm saying should we not mandate in the resolution that if we sell Grand Park, that the proceeds pay off the remaining balance, I guess is what I'm saying.
Adding a C that says upon sale.
Does that make sense?
Councilor Willis, that was exactly my question when I originally posed it about why there was no essentially restriction of or suggestion of where the money comes from. So if we put in that it's coming from the RDC via TIF dollars, then whether Grand Park sells or doesn't sell, it's already a commitment that the RDC has made. And it just, in my opinion, better defines the resolution in total.
You could do that in one sentence in there. I mean, pending the sale of Grand Park, if it happens, that the entire debt would be repaid from the funds.
Yeah, agreed, and I'm happy to work with Cindy and Ann to, to fine tune this language to whatever meets your guys' expectation, but I'll look forward to additional conversations.
And I apologize, Jeremy, for not firing that at you when I saw this. I should have said something. Could have saved us some time.
No, that's,
Yeah, no problem.
that's
It was already
okay.
in conversation.
I actually had spoken to Manny about that issue, and if Grand Park were to sell, it sounds to me like if it's sold and we get through the due diligence, they would have to go through due diligence, and it was highly likely that if it was a buyer, we wouldn't have a closing until October of next year anyway.
Yeah, it's gonna take months. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
so-
a conservative estimate.
So we're really just kind of splitting hairs between the last 60 days is all we're saying. If it were to sell, we're probably going to get the money 60 days earlier, or even 30 days earlier, but
And if there was an existing obligation, of course, that would need to be
yeah.
satisfied.
So, then then let's, there's no issue then to vote on this evening. Is that correct, Jeremy? We can hold it? I mean, we'll change.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would encourage you to propose the change in the December 1st
Yeah.
date. But otherwise, no, I think it's good. And then we'll get the resolution ran through RDC and hopefully be able to adjust the budget if that's your desire for spend in '23.
Okay.
I'll just throw out there, if somebody moves to vote on this tonight, I know we're splitting hairs based on timing, but I want the language added as well that indicates that if Grand Park is sold prior to December 1st of 2023, the second payment, the entire balance is due on this loan at that time.
If we make these changes, we're not behind if we don't vote on this until the next meeting though, right? I mean, those are two changes we're wanting to add, the Grand Park language and then the change to January 1.
Right, right.
Correct.
So we're
Jeremy, that doesn't put us behind in your schedule with RDC, does it? Do we need to do this tonight?
We do not have to do this tonight. Certainly not if we're going to change that date from December 1st. That gives us a little more runway to get a resolution through RDC. But my concern was delaying this another 2 weeks and then having to go through an RDC resolution process and then an additional appropriation process to try to hit December 1st. So if we're willing to change that date, then I think it makes everything much more smooth and we can have a fine-tuned resolution at the next council meeting.
Else, there's any questions? Agreement? Okay. All right, hearing none then, we will make the changes requested this evening and we'll be back for adoption consideration at our September 12th meeting. The next item, do we have any residents who would wish to address the council this evening?
We have
Any
one
cards?
card.
We have one card. Thank you, Kevin.
Marla Ayler.
Thanks, sorry. Mayor, council, good evening. Just real quick, as I reviewed your agenda, since we've been sitting here, I wanted to address Resolution 21-121. Mr. Willis filed his campaign finance report on January 19th, 2022. For 2021, on November 4th, he reported that he had in fact received more than $1,000 from Mr. Wilkes and should have not voted without saying something.
Well, I apologize. I did review my campaign finance report, but I must not have seen that, so I do apologize.
No problem. I'm sure all those people would have probably liked to have known that. And then the other things, the CERTA board, I wanted to let you know, a dear friend of mine is on the Fishers City Council, and so I had made a phone call to him, and Mayor Fadness had supplied him with a voluminous reading on what exactly the board was. I was in Fishers on Saturday, but he could not find it fast enough for me to pick it up from him. But if you are interested in reading more, I will be happy to attempt to get that information, or you could contact him yourself, and please just shoot me an email. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Any other comments?
Chris Larson, City Westfield IT. This is not really public comment, but a comment for the public. Jeremy is on Central Time, so that special meeting on the 31st is at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So I just wanted that to be clear on the public record. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. All right. Clerk treasurer comments.
Not tonight.
Not this evening, okay. City council comments. First of all, I guess a report from Cindy Spojeric, APC.
Yeah, but before I get to that, could I ask, and I guess, well, he's not here and maybe he's still online. John Nail, are you still online?
John was having a hard time with Teams while he was heading to the airport to pick up his family, but
Oh.
I'll do my best to answer if I can.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I was just wondering, where are we at with the thoroughfare plan update?
I don't know the specific time frame. Right now, and just to make sure we're not confusing two different things, so we have a road impact fee study going on that projects the traffic volumes of the city, and then subsequently there'll be an ordinance come before you that could, that will recommend a road impact fee amount for new development, residential or commercial. I think it's prudent that we get through that process, understand what those numbers are from a traffic projection perspective, and then I think we go full on the thoroughfare plan update at that point.
Okay, I thought there was something like that we had to have this done this year, the thoroughfare plan.
You are correct. It's not the thoroughfare plan. So the thoroughfare plan is a planning document.
Right.
What he is putting for you is what will be the zone improvement plan, which is required by statute with the road impact fee ordinance. So that will go through its entire process, inclusive of plan commission, I do believe, and then it'll come back for you all for the zone improvement plan to be approved. And then there will be an ordinance that establishes the road impact fee. It is due by January, and then I think early in 2023, we can take that data and really start focusing in on what a good thoroughfare plan is. So the two things are not the same, but they're very much tied together.
Okay, I kind of see that thoroughfare plan as more of the planning exercise and not the economic part of it, but.
Agreed completely, and then we'll use the data from the road impact fee study to support the thoroughfare plan.
Okay.
But we don't have that data captured yet.
Okay, and I know everyone's busy over there, but I've been asking for a while, so I was really hoping to get the capital improvement plan update at our next meeting, since we didn't get it tonight.
Yeah, so when you say capital improvement plan update, are you talking about the capital asset sheet that I sent you all and RDC and finance actually about what our upcoming projects are, or are you talking longer term than the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, it was both, actually, but we just haven't gotten an update on where we are with all of our, upcoming road projects, planned projects, but what we think we need projects. And these things are important to us, and, for budgeting as well as for the community to know what's going on. So I just really would like
I
to have
agree.
that.
So I think what you're asking for is a public works update based on what our capital improvement plan is for the next few years, we'll call it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll talk to John about that and the mayor, and then we'll huddle up and try to figure out, make sure that we're delivering exactly what you want to see.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'll get back to my reporting here. The APC did meet August 15th. On our consent agenda, we approved the Union Square Detailed Development Plan. We forwarded a positive recommendation on the Towns at Union PUD with just a few minor amendments, and I'm guessing that will be at our next meeting maybe. We held the second public hearing on North Point 2 PUD, which we had in front of us tonight. And then just an update on ARPA. The committee has not met, but we did receive our second disbursement from the Treasury. It's that 4.9 million, same as the last one. The committee, we're going to need to meet to draft an amendment to our current plan to include this amount, and then we'll need to appropriate those funds. If you recall, we are going to use it as the revenue loss reimbursement strategy that they're allowing us to use, and putting then that, it would go in basically to the general fund, but we've also agreed to the pledge for the Y for the majority of those funds, if you recall. So just to update you on that, and it'll be coming forward soon. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other reports, councilors? Comments? Hearing none. My only comment was Manny and I met last week to talk about Taft invoicing and kind of, discuss the issue, and I was assured that Taft would be invoicing on a more timely basis moving forward. So that is all I have for tonight. Mayor Cook?
Nothing more.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming this evening. Meeting's closed.
Time, huh?